Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah here. We're holding Mishnah Berurah El Gimel and Mirz Hashem today. We will be learning Daf Tzadik Aleph Amid Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today on Tzadik Aleph Amid Aleph. We're in the middle of Siman Shin Gimel Sif Tes. We did all of the Mechaber. We have one Mishnah Berurah left over here, and that is Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Chaf Hey. So again, it's on Tzadik Aleph Amid Aleph, Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Chaf Hey, Siman Shin Gimel Sif Tes. Our learning should be a schus. For Achenu Kabeis Yisrael, Hanasunim Batzaru Bashivya, Haimdim Bei Bayamu Bein Bayabasha, Hamakim Yerachem Aleihem V'Yitzim Yitzar L'Rvacha Me'afelu La'Oiro B'Shibud L'Geula, Hashta Bagalo V'Zman Kariv and Emar Amen. Our learning should be a schus refuah shalema for Moshe Meir ben Esther Fradel, Yitzchak ben Sion ben Dusha, Tzvi ben Leah Miriam Chav Hadassah bas Rezel Serel, Dvar bas Shashabina, and Rivka bas Shira Leah. They should have a refuah shalema b'sach Shar Chayla Yisrael. And our learning should be a schus. The Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over all of our brothers and sisters who find themselves in harm's way. B'chol Makom Shehem. So let's just give a brief recap of what we learned here in Siman Shin Gimel Sif Tes, so we could close out the Sif. Here in Sif Tes, the Mechaber was discussing a woman that goes out with a machat, a needle that is somehow stuck into her beged. And the Mechaber discussed two different types of needles. There's a typical sewing needle, a machat nekuva. That's a needle with an eye. When it comes to a machat nekuva, the Mechaber said, if a woman goes out with a machat nekuva, a needle with an eye stuck into her begadim, that is an iser daraisa, the Mechaber said. Ve'miyatza chayeves. The Mishnah Berurah explained that for a woman to go out with a machat nekuva stuck into her beged, a machat nekuva is certainly not a takshit, it's a sewing needle, and it is the derech of a woman to go out with a machat nekuva stuck into her beged. So it's not a malbush, it's not a takshit, so it's a masui, and by sticking it in her beged, she's being moitziit kederech kol hameitziin. She's transporting it in a normal way. That's a normal way that a woman transports a sewing needle, by sticking it into her beged. Therefore, this would be an iser daraisa. Then the Mishnah Berurah discussed, what if she goes ahead and she uses this machat nekuva, she uses it to fasten her garment, she uses it to fasten her hair covering. What's the halacha then? The Mishnah Berurah took the position that even in such a case, it still would be aser, because it's still a masui. It's not the derech to use an item of this type in that way, and therefore, like in the words of the Mishnah Berurah, de'ein derech lahamid v'liskar b'nekuva. It's not done this way, and therefore it would still be a masui, and it's still considered being moitzi kederech kol hamitziin, because it's still stuck into your beged, and therefore the Mishnah Berurah says this would still be aser. So that's the halacha of a machat nekuva. How about a machat she'ena nekuva? What if you have a needle that does not have an eye? So when it came to that, the Mechaber said, it depends what kind of needle it is. Is it a decorative needle, or is it not a decorative needle? So apparently, there was a machat she'ena nekuva, a needle without an eye, that was just a straight pin. So it's not decorative in any way. Then there was a machat she'ena nekuva that had a fancy head. So if the machat has a fancy head, now already it becomes decorative. So in the words of the Mechaber, what the Mechaber said was, well, you have this machat she'ena nekuva. So first, says the Mechaber, it depends what you're doing with the machat she'ena nekuva. Said the Mechaber, if you use it to close a garment, if you use it to fasten your head covering, then the Mechaber said, muteres latzeispa. You're allowed to go out with it. So the Mechaber himself doesn't make a distinction. I might have given the impression that the Mechaber makes the distinction. The Mechaber himself does not make the distinction between a decorative machat she'eina nekuva and a non-decorative machat she'eina nekuva. The only distinction that the Mechaber makes is he's dealing with a machat she'eina nekuva. What is the woman doing with it? Says the Mechaber, if she's using a machat she'eina nekuva in order to fasten her garment, to close up her top, or to fasten her head covering, then the Mechaber said, Muteres Latzeis, she's allowed to go out with it. And as the Mishnah Berurah explained, if she's using it in a functional way, so then it becomes a malbush. If she's using it to close her top, so then this is something that would be mutter. Why not? She's using it in a functional manner. It becomes, in the words of the Mishnah Berurah, kibeis yad lahamalbushim. It's butter to the malbush. It becomes like a button, or it becomes like a clasp. And therefore the Mechaber said, this would be mutter. Then the Mishnah Berurah came along, and the Mishnah Berurah said, hold it a minute. There are achronim who want to make a distinction, and they want to look at it, they want to say, wait a second, even if you're using the machat she'eina nekuva in a functional way, it depends if it's decorative or if it's not decorative. If it's decorative, then it becomes a tachshit. Now, you might think that that's good. It's not. If it becomes a tachshit, then that is going to generate, it's not the right word. It's not the word I'm looking for. That's going to bring upon us the gzeira against wearing jewelry. If it's a straight pin that has a decorative head, now we have to look at it as a piece of jewelry. Now we have to worry that dilma shalfa umachavia. Maybe she'll take it off and show it to somebody. So again, it gets a little complicated. The Mechaber said, a machat she'eina nekuva, a straight pin, no eye. If she uses it to fasten her garment, if she uses it to fasten on her head covering, the Mechaber said it's mutter. The Mishnah Berurah says, wait a second, there are achronim that say that depends. If it's decorative, that might bring upon her the gzeira of dilma shalfa umachavia, and maybe it's an issa d'rabbanan. There are other achronim that say, no, this is not going to turn on the gzeira of dilma shalfa umachavia, because she can't take it off. If she takes it off, it's going to unfasten her top. If she takes it off her head covering, it's going to loosen her head covering. So you can't turn on the gzeira of dilma shalfa umachavia. That's what we learned yesterday. Then at the end of Siftes, the Mechaber said, but how about im eina mamedes baki shureha? How about if it's a straight pin and she's not using it to fasten her garment? So she just has a straight pin and she sticks it in her clothing. What's the halacha then? Said the Mechaber, Osir. That was the first word of Tzadik Aleph Amud Aleph. The Mechaber said Osir. That brings us to where we were holding Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan L'Chav Hey. So again, what we're talking about over here is the woman takes a straight pin, she sticks it into her begadim, and she's not using it as a clasp, she's not using it to hold on her head covering, she's just sticking a straight pin into her clothing. The Mechaber said this would be Osir. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan L'Chav Hey. Osir lotzeis pa, it would be osir for her to go out with it, kishehi techuva b'tzeifa, when this straight pin is stuck into her head covering, oy bebigda, or into her garment. And says the Mishnah Berurah, afilu im hi miskashetes pa, even if she's using it as some kind of an adornment, kigayin sharoisha of, maybe it has a wide head, va'osui ke'ein takshit, maybe it's a little bit decorative. De'ein by chiyuva da'araisa. Now it wouldn't be an issa da'araisa. So in other words, what the Mishnah Berurah is saying is like this. If it's a plain straight pin, and you just take a plain straight pin, and you stick it into your garment, and you go out, talking about a woman, that would be an issa da'araisa. Because, again, let's break it down according to the rules that we know. Is it a takshit? No, it's a straight pin. A straight pin is not a takshit. Is it a malbush? No. She's not using it as a clasp or anything else. So what is it? It's a masui. So if it's a regular straight pin, that l'chayra would be an issa daraisa. Now the Mishnah Berurah is saying, but if it is a decorative straight pin, so now it won't be a chiyuv daraisa, because now it's a takshit. She's using it as an adornment. So now it's a takshit. So midaraisa, it's okay to go out with the takshit, but it's going to be nisad derabanan. Why is it going to be nisad derabanan? Afilu achi also midarabanan dilma shalfo machavia. Because once it becomes decorative, now we have the gzera derabanan against jewelry. Dilma shalfo machavia. She might take it off and show it to somebody. The cholshkein, certainly. Dim einoi asli kein takshit. If it's a plain straight pin, if it's a plain needle, the nechshav masa, now it's a masa. The chayeves chatas, that would be an issa daraisa. V'da'oid, and you should know further, says the Mishnah Berurah. And he makes a very important point over here that one might think doesn't even need to be made. But the Mishnah Berurah goes ahead to make the point. Says the Chavetz Chaim, v'da'oid, you should understand further. The bazeh she'enoi asli ke'ein takshit. If it's a plain needle, that's not decorative in any way. Afilu im tzricha lo hamachat le'ezeh tzara sheyihya. Even if she needs the machat, kegoyin lachlik ba sa'ara, she uses it to straighten out her hair, v'kayoytze behen, or for some other purpose. Mikamakayim harehu masli gomor. It's still a masli. She'ein adam yachal lotzis ba b'chalach hafatzim asvikim loy ki she'ein on loy malbish v'loy takshit. You're not allowed to go carry things if they're not a malbish and not a takshit. In other words, the point that the Mishnah Berurah is making over here is we're going back and forth, and we're making distinctions between what the point of the needle is. So let's concentrate on the new Mishnah Berurah that we learned here today. So we have a makat she'eina nekuva. We have a needle that does not have an eye. The Mechaber said it's also to stick it in, for a woman to stick it into her garment and go out. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, there's two different cases over here. One case would be a non-decorative needle. So a woman takes a non-decorative needle, she sticks it into her garment, she wants to go out. Is it a malbush? No. She's not using it in a functional manner. She's not using it as a clasp or anything else. So it's not a malbush. Is it a takshit? No. It's a plain straight pin. That's not a takshit. So what is it? It's a masui. She's sticking it into her garment, she's going out, she's being moitzi at kedar kalamitzian, that's an issa daraisa. How about if it's decorative? It has a nice head on it. Well, if it has a nice head on it, now it's elevated to the level of a takshit. Once it's elevated to the level of a takshit, now it's no longer an issa daraisa. Is it mutter? No. Why? Because it's an issa darabanan. Why is it an issa darabanan? Because now that it's a takshit, we have to be worried. Dilma shalfo machavia, she might take it off and she might show it to somebody. That's the halacha of the machat she'eina nekuva. Comes along the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says, but realize something. How about a woman will come with a plain straight pin that's not decorative in any way, and she'll stick it into her garment, and she'll go out, and somebody will say, hey, you're not allowed to do that. That's an issa daraisa. It's not a takshit. It's not decorative. It's not a malbush. You're not using it in a functional way. It's a masu. You're being maitzi kedar kol mitziin. It's an issa daraisa. The woman will turn around and say, but what do you mean? It's serving a purpose. What purpose is it serving? I need it. What do you need it for? I need it. I use it to, comb my hair a little bit in a manner that's permissible on Shabbos, just to straighten out or flatten out my hair. So I'm sticking it in my beged, not just to transport it. I'm sticking it in my beged because I need it. So what? That need does not elevate it to become a takshit or a malbush. You're not using it as a malbush. You're not using it as a garment. You're not using it as a takshit. It's not adorning you in any way. Yeah, you have a need for it. Are you allowed to take a toothpick and stick it in your pocket and carry it outside on Shabbos because you have a need for it? No, you're not. So that's the point that the Mishnah Berurah is making over here. It doesn't matter that you have some kind of need. You're not allowed to carry things on Shabbos just because you have a need for them. Okay, weiter. Let's go to Sif Yud. Top line here in the Shulchan Aruch Tzadik Aleph Amud Aleph says the Mechaber. Lo yiseitze b'tabas sheyesh aleha choisam. A woman is not allowed to go out with a signet ring. Ve'im yotza, and if she would go out with a signet ring, chayeves. This would be an iser daraisa. Says the Mishnah Berurah Chavav, chayeves. Why is this an iser daraisa? Very simple. Dein derech isha lase saleh tabas sheyesh aleha choisam. It's not the derech for a woman to wear a signet ring. V'alkein, and therefore, lo yehavik takshit. It's not a takshit. It's not the derech of an isha to wear this as a takshit. So it is not a takshit. At the same time, it is considered being moitzi kedar kol mitziin, even though it's not the derech for the woman to wear a signet ring. But if she does put it on her finger, that is considered that she's carrying it in a normal fashion. Why? Because sometimes a man will take off his signet ring, give it to his wife, and say, do me a favor, take it home and put it in my drawer. And umanicha be'etzba, so then she'll put it on her finger until she gets home. Now, in that case, why is she putting it on? Is she putting it on to be a takshit? No, she's putting it on to transport it. So in a nutshell, what the Mechaber told me over here is like this. For a woman to wear a signet ring, again, let's break it down. Is it a malbush? No, it doesn't conceal or protect the body. Is it a takshit? No, because a signet ring is not a takshit for a woman. So it's not a malbush, it's not a takshit. What is it? It's a masui. All right, it's a masui. She's going out with the masui. She's going out with the signet ring on her finger. The last checkbox we need to check off is she being moitziit kedera kol hametziin? Is she transporting it in a normal fashion? So your instant reaction might be, no, she's not, because you just told me it's not normal for a woman to wear a signet ring. No. It's not normal for a woman to wear a signet ring as a takshit, but it is normal for a woman to wear a takshit, to wear a signet ring in order to transport it, because sometimes her husband will give her his signet ring, ask her to transport it home, and she will transport it by wearing it on her finger. So she's being moitziat kedar kalamitzian, and therefore this would be an iser da'araisa. Going back to the Mechaber, top line, end of the line. If you have a ring that does not have a signet on it, it's a regular ring. A woman is not allowed to go out with a ring. Remember the elephant in the room, right? There's a little bit of a disconnect here. We're saying a woman's not allowed to go out wearing a ring. Our women go out wearing rings on Shabbos all the time. We'll get there. If it's a ring that does not have a signet on it, she's not allowed to go out with it. But if she does, petura, it's potter avaloser. She's exempt, but it's aser midrabanan. Why? We know the answer. Because a ring without a signet is a takshit. Since it's a takshit for an isha, midaraisa, it's mutter. Midrabanan, it's aser. Why is it aser midrabanan? You know the answer. Dilma sholfa machavia. She might take it off and show it to somebody. Says the Mishnah Berurah kan chazayin. Lo say dilma sholfa machavia. Ubediyevet petura. But bediyevet, if she goes out, she's potter. Levishu takshit lisha, because a ring without a signet is a takshit for a woman. Vayin le'el b'sibin shin aleph siftas hadin le'inyan ish. Back in shin aleph, we discussed the halacha of rings and men. Moving along to Sif Yud Aleph. Says the Mechaber, Lo yiseitze b'kol yar. A woman is not allowed to go out with a kol yar. And right away, the Mechaber defines what is a kol yar. V'hu takshit. A kol yar is a takshit. Shekoisheres by mifteche chaluka. This was some kind of a decorative gadget that was used as a clasp. So what's a kulyar? A kulyar is a clasp that a woman used to close her top. That's a kulyar. And says the Mechaber, lo yiseitze b'kulyar. A woman's not allowed to go out with a kulyar. Now, I'll give you a heads up. The Mechaber says lo yiseitze. You can't go out. The Mechaber does not tell us over here whether this kulyar, is it an issa d'Rabbanan, is it an issa d'Oraisa? But this is based on a Mishnah in Masechta Shabbos. And in the Mishnah, it says, V'im yotzasa chayeves, chatos. If a woman goes out with a kulyar, it's an issa d'Oraisa. She's chayev chatos. So now we're going to have to break this down. So again, let's just read the words of the Mechaber carefully. Lo yiseitze b'kulyar. A woman cannot go out with a kulyar. V'hu tachshit. This kulyar is a tachshit. Shekoisheres by mifteche chaluka. That's a clasp that she uses to close her top. Now, if we stop right over here, and we don't see the Mishnah Berurah, you're going to be very puzzled. I told you the Mishnah says that you go out with the kulyar, it's an issa d'Oraisa. Now wait a second. If it's a clasp and she's using it to close her top, how could it be an issa d'Oraisa? Maybe you want to tell me it's some kind of issa d'Rabbanan, maybe. But even as it is issa d'Rabbanan, it would need explanation. If it's the clasp that closes her top, so then isn't it bottled to the malbush? Isn't it a yad to the malbush? how could it be even an Issa D'Rabbanan? So let's take a look where the Mishnah Berurah is going to make a very important point that we would not understand if we didn't see it in the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Loi Seitze B'Kulyar. A woman cannot go out with a kulyar. But Mishnah, in the Mishnah Masechta Shabbos Samach Beis Amud Aleph, Isa, the Mishnah teaches us that al kulyar chayev es chatos, that this is an Issa D'Oraisa. Va'ayin lekamei, says the Chavetz Chaim. That sounds like a bomb. Why is this an Issa D'Oraisa? Says the Mishnah Berurah, ayin lekamei. Let's see further. Ois kat lechav tes. She'koi sheres boy. The Mechaber described this kulyar to us as a clasp that she uses to close her top. Says the Mishnah Berurah, yeah, it is a clasp. Pirush, darkoi shel kulyar lekach. Yes, a kulyar is made to be a clasp to close her garment. Aval ata, but in the case that the Mechaber is talking about here, in Siman Shin Gimel Sif Yod Aleph, Aval ata eina segeres by miftachei chalukah. But this woman that the Mechaber is talking about is not using the kulyar as a clasp. Ela tayenes kachaleha. Instead of using the kulyar as a clasp, she's taking the kulyar and somehow she's attaching it to her garment. But she's not using it as a kulyar. So says the Mishnah Berurah, the Mechaber did a very nice job here. He said that the woman cannot go out with a kulyar. Then he defined what the kulyar is, and he told us that the kulyar is a clasp. You read it, you think that the Mechaber means a woman can't go out using a kulyar in the normal fashion, wearing it as a clasp. And you're left with a big kasha. Why not? Says the Mishnah Berurah, because this woman is not using the kulyar as a clasp. She has a kulyar, but instead of using it as a clasp, she's somehow sticking it onto her garment and going out with it on her garment. Again, says the Mishnah Berurah, Pirush, darkoi shel kulyar lekach. Yeah, the kulyar is made to be a clasp. Aval ata eina segeres miftachei chalukah, but this woman's not using it as a clasp. Ela tayenes kachaleha. She's just carrying it attached to her garment. That's why the Mishnah says this is an Issa D'Oraisa. Because again, let's break it down. Is it a malbush? No. If she would be using it as a clasp, so maybe it would be a malbush. But she's not using it as a clasp. Is it a takshit? So let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says. Deloi choshev takshit elamasui. Because the way she's wearing it, not only is it not a malbush, it's not even a takshit. It's a masui. Why? The einoi ela laharois oisher. Because what she's doing is, all she's doing is she's showing off. She's saying, look, I have a fancy, expensive kulyar. Look, I'm a well-to-do person. Now, this needs a little bit of an explanation. The way I understand it, and I saw somewhere a very good example of this. Let's say cufflinks. Okay? When you wear cufflinks close your shirt. So the cufflinks are clearly either bottled to the malbush. Now, maybe they're not bottled to the malbush because if they're expensive cufflinks, maybe they can't be bottled to the garment, but they're at least a takshit. They're for sure at least a malbush or a takshit. You're using it as a clasp. Now, what if somebody has a beautiful diamond-studded cufflink, but he doesn't have a French cuff shirt? So, achinvei, he has a beautiful pair of cufflinks, but he can't even show off to people, the diamond-studded cufflinks that he has, because he doesn't own a French cuff shirt. So he wants to take a cufflink, and he wants to pin a cufflink to his shirt pocket. And look, diamond-studded cufflink. What's that all about? It's not a malbush, because you're not using it as a cufflink. You're not using it to close your shirt. It's not a takshit, because that's not the way the takshit is worn. That's not the derech of how you wear a cufflink. So it's not a malbush, it's not a takshit. What is it? It's a masui. You figured out a cute way to carry your cufflink because you want to show off your cufflink. But it's not a malbush, it's not a takshit, it's a masui. That's what the Mishnah Berurah is saying over here. The kulyar, if she's not using it as a kulyar, if she's not using it as a clasp to close her top, she just has a fancy kulyar and she wants to show it off, so she somehow pins it onto her garment, walking out with her kulyar. It's not a malbush. It's not a takshit because you're not wearing it the way the takshit is meant to be worn. So it's not a malbush. It's not a takshit. It's a masui. It's an isser daraisa. And that's what the Mishnah Berurah, I believe, means over here. He says, the loy choshev takshit el masui. It's not a takshit. It's a masui. The einoi el laharois oisher. It's not being worn. If it would be worn in the manner of the takshit, so then it's a takshit. But she's not wearing it in the manner of the takshit. The manner of the takshit would be to wear it as a clasp. She's not wearing it as a clasp. So what is she doing? She wants to show off. I have an expensive kulyar. I don't have a top that I could use a kulyar on, but I have an expensive kulyar, so I'll hang it on my jacket. That's called a masui. You're not allowed to do that. It's a daraisa. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. Avalim gam ata sekeres ba miftache chaluka. But let's say she would be using it in the proper fashion. Let's say she would use the taka as a clasp to close her top. Mutter lechatchila. It would be 100% mutter to have a takshit. Now you might turn around and say, hold it, wait a second. If it's a takshit, why doesn't that now spur the gzeira of dilma shalfa machavia? Says the Mishnah, I'll tell you why. She can't take it off and show it to somebody. Dim can't tegala besara. If she's using it to close her top, she can't take it off to show it to somebody. It's going to open her top. It's going to expose her, so she can't do it. V'ayin b'bir halacha says, take a look at the bir halacha for more detail in this halacha. Okay, let's go weiter. Boy, it's taking a long time. Let's go weiter here in Sif Yod Aleph. So we did the first halacha of Sif Yod Aleph was the kulyar. Now 3 lines down, let's go to the second halacha of Sif Yod Aleph. V'loi b'koiveles. A woman is not allowed to go out with a koiveles. What is a koiveles? Says the Mechaber, v'hu kesher shekashu bar boisim shareichoi toiv. This was a cachet that had pleasant smelling aromatics in it, and you wore it around the neck. So it was a cachet, a nice perfumed cachet that you wore around your neck. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the Mechaber, you're not allowed to go out with this koiveles. Says the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Lamed, v'hu kesher v'isha shereicha ro toyenes aleha. This is something that a woman who had a problem, a challenge with body odor, she would go out wearing this kind of cachet. Ve'ena chayeves alav mipnei shehu takshit. Now, you can't be an issa daraisa to go out with this cachet, because since this cachet is serving a purpose for her, it is therefore not an issa daraisa, it's a takshit. But we do have a problem over here of dilma shalfa umechavia. Now the truth is that this is based on a Gemara in Shabbos, where there are 3 different shitas. There are those that hold that it's an issa daraisa to go out with this koiveles, because they hold that it's not considered a takshit, because most women don't wear it. It's only a minority of women that have this problem that wear it, and therefore it's not considered a takshit, and it's an issa daraisa. There are those that hold, like what the Mechaber is paskening over here, that it is considered a takshit, because it's normal for women that have this challenge, it's normal for them to wear it, and therefore it is a takshit. But there's an issa d'Rabbanan of dilma shalfa umechavia, and then there's an even more makel opinion that holds that it's mamish mutal lechatchila. Why is it mutal lechatchila? Because it's a takshit, and dilma shalfa umechavia is not an issue, because a woman who has this challenge wouldn't want to take it off. So there wouldn't be exera dilma shalfa umechavia, but the Mechaber is paskening that it is a takshit, and there is a problem in the Rabbanan of dilma shalfa umechavia. It's a cachet that has aromatic spices. The same halacha would apply. There were other women who, what they did was they took a vial that had afrasamin, which is, I think, myrrh. It's a pleasant smelling oil in a vial, and they would wear it on their arm. That would also be aser midrabanan. Moving along to Sif Yud Gimel. Sif Yud Beis. 3 lines down, Sif Yod Beis, says the Mechaber, Im chasar achas mishineha. If a woman is missing a tooth, u'masima acher b'mekaymai, so she puts a fake tooth to fill in the gap. Imhu shal zahav, if it's gold, lo yiseitze bai, she's not allowed to go out with it. Why? Dekeven shemishune b'mara mishar shinayim, because since it is very clearly, it looks very different than her other teeth, So therefore, Dilma Mevazula, somebody might laugh at her. Look at that weirdo. She has that gold tooth over there. Somebody might laugh at her. And therefore, v'shaklale, she'll be embarrassed. She'll take it off. Umamtiya, she'll come to carry it in Rosh Hashanah. Avol shall kesef, but if it's silver, shedoima l'sha'ar shinayim, which is similar to the rest of her teeth, it's not obvious. It's not something that you look and you see right away. What is that in her mouth? Mutter, then it's mutter. V'chosh kein shein da adam, certainly if it's a false tooth that looks like a person's tooth, or it's a real person's tooth, that would be 100% mutter. Moving along to Sif Yud Gimel, says the Mechaber, lo yiseitze b'minol hakarua lamayla. A woman is not allowed to go out with a shoe where the upper of the shoe is torn. Why? Because people will laugh at her, and she may come to remove the shoe to save herself embarrassment and then come to carry it in Rosh Hashanah. A woman is also not allowed to go out with a brand new shoe. Why? Because we know how shoes are. When you put on a brand new shoe, it doesn't really fit right. It's not broken in yet. Sometimes it ends up being too tight. Sometimes it ends up being too big. So a woman can't go out with a new shoe. Maybe walking in it, she'll find that it's not really her size, and she'll come to take it off and carry it. Unless she wore it on Erev Shabbos for a while and she sees that it taka fits. Aval ish mutter, but a man, it would be permissible for him to go out like this. Shei makbit kol kach, because men are not so persnickety with these things, and therefore we're not worried that they're going to come to carry the shoe. Says the Ramah Haga, ubisha'ar malbushim, when it comes to other articles of clothing, a shirt, a blouse, a jacket, ein lachish, we don't have to worry that because it's new, they might come to take it off in Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos. Afilu be'isha, even by a woman, we don't have to worry about this. And this is like we saw earlier at the beginning of the Siman in the Mishnah Berurah, where the Mishnah Berurah said, we don't have to worry that somebody's going to take off regular articles of clothing in the street and carry them. It's only by the smaller things or by something like the shoe where there's a particular reason to worry about it. But by regular articles of clothing, we don't have to worry that people are going to take it off and carry it in Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah Cut and Lamed Beis. Shema lo yavoi. By the shoe that's new, we have to worry. Maybe it'll turn out that the shoe does not fit the shalfalei, and therefore she'll remove it. Va'asya lasuye and come to carry it in Rosh Hashanah. Ois kat lamed gimel, unless she wore it may esmail on Erev Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah, brings down from the Gemara, afilu rak sha'echas, even if she only wore it for an hour on Erev Shabbos, but she wore it for an hour on Erev Shabbos, and she found it to be comfortable, now she's allowed to go out with it on Shabbos. Ois kat lamed dalid, aval ish muter. But for a man, it would be permissible, says the Mishnah Berurah, atarvayukoi. This is going back on both cases of Sif Yud Gimel. It's going on the shoe that has the upper that is torn. It's also going on the new shoe. In both cases, a man is allowed to go out because a man is not so finicky. So his shoe has a ripped upper. Somebody will snort at him. He doesn't care. He's not going to take the shoe off. Same thing with the fit. Okay, it's a little uncomfortable, right? Deal with it. They're not going to take it off. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut lamed hey, ubisha'ar malbushim. The Ramah said, but by other garments we don't have this worry. We're not concerned by other garments that people might take them off and walk with them in Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos. Besif katan gimel. Moving along to Sif Yud Dalid, 5 lines off the bottom, says the Mechaber, Yoitzeis bechutei seyar. A woman is allowed to go out with strands of hair. Now, Rashi in Masechta Shabbos describes what this means. He says what this means is, in the words of Rashi, these are strands of hair, shekailas bahen sara, with which she braids her hair. Now, what I believe that means is that a woman braids her hair and then takes these strands of hair and kind of ties it to affix the braid. I believe that's what it means. I've seen other people suggest that what it means is kind of like hair extensions almost. I don't know exactly how hair extensions are fastened, but these are strands of hair that are braided into her hair. But whatever it is, either way, says the Mechaber, she's allowed to go out, yoitzeis Bechute seor, she's allowed to go out with these strands of hair, bein shehem asuyim misa'ara, whether they are fashioned out of her own hair that was detached from her head, oyim misa'ar kaverta, or it's another woman's hair, va'afilu misa'ar behema, or even if it's horse hair, an animal hair, she's allowed to go out with it. Ubelvad, with the exception, a caveat, shaloi teitze zekena b'shal yalda, an older woman whose hair is gray or white cannot go out with black hair, young hair, fastened into her hair, v'lo yalda b'shal zekena, or a young girl can't go out with white hair from an older woman in her hair. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah's cut limud vav. Bechute seir. Now, very interesting words here in the Mishnah Berurah. Bechute seir. She's allowed to go out with these strands of hair, shemehat kosan al roisha, that are tight on her head. Now, let's break this down for a second. A woman is taking strands of hair, and she's affixing it to her own hair. So she's braiding it into her hair, or she's wrapping the braid of her hair together. She's using this external hair, this hair that is not from her, or it's from her, but it's detached from her head. She's using it to wrap around her braided hair. The Mechaber is saying she's allowed to go out with this. All right, what is this? Is it a malbush? Is it a takshit? I guess it's not a malbush. It's not an article of clothing. It's not concealing or protecting the body. I guess it's a takshit, right? It's an adornment. It's being used to fix the braid. It's being used to make her look pretty. So I guess it's a takshit. All right. If it's a takshit, so it's mutter daraisa, would there be a reason to make it awesome in the Rabbanan? So I could give you two reasons why it might be awesome in the Rabbanan. One reason, well, tachshit, maybe we have to worry Dilma Shalfa Umachavya. Dilma Shalfa Umachavya? She might take it off and show it to somebody? What is she taking off and showing? A hair? It's not a necklace. It's not a piece of jewelry that she went, look what I have. It's hair. What is she going to do? Take a piece of hair off her head and say, look what I have. I have horse hair. Dilma Shalfa Umachavya doesn't make sense. Would we be afraid that it might fall off? And she might come to carry it? Well, the Mishnah Berurah was very careful to say, shemehat kosan al roisha, that it's attached to her head. I think the Mishnah Berurah is trying to make the point here that it's firmly affixed to her hair. So it's not going to fall off. She's not going to take it off. It's firmly affixed to her hair. And that's why this is mamish mutter. It's mamish mutter b'daraisa. It's a takshit. And there doesn't seem to be a gzeira d'Rabbanan that applies. Now, there's one more gzeira d'Rabbanan that you might be tempted to apply. And that's the gzeira d'Rabbanan that we dealt with right away in Sif Aleph, in Shin Gimel Sif Aleph. And that is, what if she has to go be tovel in the mikveh? If she has to go be tovel in the mikveh, would she have to take this hair off because it would make a chatzitza? And the answer is no, she wouldn't have to. And let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, first of all, he makes a distinction between this case and between a sheitel, a wig. This is not a wig that we're going to say later a woman's not allowed to go out with. Again, elephant in the room, fine. This is not a wig. The hasam yesh ba mishum takshit. Over there, by pei anachris, we have takshit issues. Dilma Shalfa Machavya. Aval Hachahu Rak Chutin Ba'alma. Over here it's just hairs. It's not a pei anachris. Says the Mishnah Berurah Lam Zayin Vafilu Misa'ar Behema, even if it's the hair of an animal. V'loyarmina dema isvasi l'mishlalfa. We don't say that if it's animal hair, at some point, even though she put it on, she might be tempted to say, "Ach, it's repulsive," and take it off. No, we're not worried. Now, in the Sharitzir and Oiskat Lamed Beis, the Chavetz Chaim addresses what I just said. How about that she might have to take it off to go to the mikveh? Says the Chavetz Chaim, no. In Sif Aleph we said, if she has hair, strings of wool in her hair, she's not allowed to go out with them on Shabbos. Why? Because if she has to go to the mikveh, she has to take those off. Because if she leaves them on, they're a chatzitza, and then she might come to carry them in Rosh Hashanah. Says the Chavetz Chaim here in the Sharet Zion, this is not the case when it comes to here. Here cannot be a chatzitza. The seyar al gabe seyar loy chaitzi, because the Gemara says that here cannot form a chatzitza between it and other hair. So if a woman has her hair attached to her head, and she takes detached hair and she wraps it around, we say that the water goes through. That would not be a chatzitza. So we're left, there's no Issa D'Rabbanan to apply over here. So it's a tashit and it's mutter. Okay, let's go weiter. Ois cotton lamed ches. Says the Mishnah Berurah, we did lamed zayin, lamed ches. Ubavad shaloi seitze, but an older woman that has white hair can't go out with the hair of a young woman, dark hair, or a young woman who has dark hair can't go out with hair of an older woman that's white hair. Hatam b'cholzeh, the reason for all of this is mishum demechaychala v'asi l'shlufei v'la'asuye, because if she goes out with mismatched hair, people might laugh at her, and she might take it off and come to carry it. Let's go weiter. 3 lines off the bottom. Sif Tez Vav says the Mechaber. Yoitzeis bekesher she'oisin l'refuas kituf ayin hara shaloi yishloit. A woman is allowed to go out with some kind of a cachet, something that's made to ward off an ayin hara. So again, this is some kind of cachet that a woman wore, and it was the right to bindle. This was something that was supposed to ward off ayin hara, above my pay grade. Says the Mishnah Berurah, cut lamites l'refuas kitov nire misham de bezmanam hayizeh boduk l'refuah. We spent a lot of time talking about kameyas, about amulets, and a kameya mumcha, a kameya she'eda mumcha. How does a kameya become a kameya mumcha? And we said that if a kameya is a kameya mumcha, if a kameya is proven to be therapeutic for a certain illness, then a person with that illness is allowed to go out with it. Why? Because for him, it's a takshit. So to over here, this amulet that was worn to ward off ayin hara, says the Mishnah Berurah, back in the day, there were amulets of this type that were known to be mumcha. They were known to work. So then it's kamei mumcha. And okay, so once we know that this kesher is considered like a kamei mumcha, so now midaraisa you're allowed to go out with it because it's a takshit. Okay, do we have to worry dilma shalfa or machavya? Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. There's nothing to show off. It's not pretty. The gzeira of dilma shalfa or machavya is a woman's going to take off her necklace, show it to her friend. Look at the gorgeous necklace my husband bought me. Look at the eternity ring my husband bought me. Nobody's taking off the anti-ayin hara amulet and showing it off and saying, look at the beautiful kasher that I have. It's not pretty. So it doesn't pass the gzeira of dilma shalfa u me'echavya. Says the Mechaber weiter. Next halacha of Sif Tez Vav. Uvemoich hakosher u'mehudak ba'ozna. A woman is allowed to go out with an absorbent cloth, that's a moich, hakosher, that is tied, u'mehudak, and firmly affixed, ba'ozna, in her ear. Says the Mishnah Berurah, hakosher u'mehudak. First thing, this absorbent cloth that was inserted in her hair, in her ear, E-A-R, the Mechaber says it has to be tied and firmly affixed. Why? Because if not, it might fall off and she might come to carry it. This is ba'azna, in her ear. What's the point of this cloth? A woman had moisture exuding from her ear, earwax, other moisture. So she put this cloth in to catch it. It shouldn't fall out on her, right? So that's what the purpose of the moich is. This is really a malbush. It's not a takshit. It's a malbush. It's serving the body. So midaraisa, this is okay. But it has to be tied and affixed carefully. It has to be affixed firmly in her ear. Otherwise, we're afraid that she might come, it might fall off, and she might come to carry it. Contemporary poskim seem to say that a piece of cotton in the ear you're allowed to go out with, and it doesn't have to be tied, and it doesn't have to be firmly affixed, because if it falls out, nobody's picking it up. It's mos. No one's going to pick it up and carry it. Okay. Says the Mechaber weiter, 2 lines off the bottom, second halacha of Tezvav, uvemoich shebesandola. She's allowed to have a cushion in her shoe. Says the Mishnah Berurah, this is for comfort purposes. Maybe it's a cushion under the heel. Maybe it's something to tighten up the shoe. But it's serving a purpose. It's serving the person. It's functional. So you're allowed to go out with it. The gambazeh had to be in. Now the Mechaber says over Moshe besandola hakosher besandola, but it has to be tied to her shoe. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the gambazeh had to be in a kesher. Why do you need it tied to the shoe? Mishum dilmanafol vasi lasuye, because we're afraid it might fall out of the shoe and she might come to carry it. Masha enke b'moich linidasa. This stands in contrast to the halacha that we'll learn tomorrow about an absorbent moich for a woman that's a nida. Afilu im yipa lo shakalte klal. If that would fall off of her, she wouldn't pick it up. Mishum demois. It's repulsive. Aiskat mem gimel kosher b'sandola. This cushion has to be tied to the shoe. Mashmi b'loshen Shulchan Aruch. It's implied from the language of the Shulchan Aruch. De bezel loy be'inan mahuduk. The chay kasev b'tei sefer Shabbos. If you notice, when it comes to the moich in the ear, the Mechaber used 2 words. Kosher, it's tied, umahuduk, and affixed firmly. Over here, by the moich in the shoe, he says kosher. He doesn't say mahuduk. So apparently by the shoe, we're less worried that it's going to fall out. And on that note, let's see the last halacha that we're going to learn today. So the Mechaber said that a cushion in the shoe has to be tied to the shoe. Now some of you might be wondering, the moich has to be tied to the shoe? How's it going to fall out of the shoe? The answer is, remember, we're talking about women's shoes. A lot of women's shoes were, I don't know what they're called, the shoes that don't really have sides, a platform shoe or something, right? Her foot is really exposed. So if she has a cushion under her foot, it could slip out. But on that note, says the Mechaber, if it's a sandal or a shoe that's closed on all sides, so then the cushion doesn't have to be tied. I feel in a kosher mutter. So then even if the cushion is not tied, it's mutter because it's not falling out. Says the Mishnah Berurah mem dalid mikol tzad la'afuke pantina shalanu. This stands in contrast to our slippers that were open. Yesh chshasha be'in a kosher d'manafel. Maybe it'll fall out for asi la'asuye, and she will come to carry it. And we will continue next time with the last words on the page here of Amoich Sheheskina Linidasa. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The source of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua's refuahs parnassah shtuchim to all those who need. We should be zoichet to see the Bias Gal Tzedek B'meheri V'Yameinu. Amen. Be well.